Hello, boys and girls. Lord Hawkeye here again. This is a subject that I haven't touched on before. I've meant to at times, but couldn't quite find the right words for it. Before I get into it, time to listen to one of my silly little stories to help illustrate the point I'm about to make. Picture this, if you will. Imagine there's a doctor who's in charge of dealing with a pretty widespread disease, and not a very nice one. He does have a cure for it, that's the good news. The bad news is this cure is not very pleasant. It has really nasty side effects. It's quite painful to go through. It's very nasty, but it's the only way he knows in order to cure this disease, and does feel it's important. So he keeps doing this. Now, a colleague one day says to him, "Hey, guess what? I've been doing some research, I've been testing, and I think I just come up with a better cure. This one also works, but it doesn't have all the side effects, it doesn't have all the pain and everything. It'll be far more pleasant for our patients. I think you should definitely take a look at this, and I think you'll change your practice to use this new cure." Now, if this doctor, in response to this, were to not only refused to even look at the research, but actually attacked anyone who suggested it to him, like just called them the nastiest names, tried to hurt their reputation any way he could, like just fought tooth and nail to keep his old cure going, what would you think of him? Would you think that he truly cared about the well-being of his patients? Or would you start to get suspicion that maybe he had some ulterior motive? Almost like maybe he had some kind of a thing for watching people suffer and didn't want to give that up. Pretty sinister. Which brings me to my current topic. Spanking hypocrites. Oh yes, if this doesn't get me 1,000 dislikes, I don't know what will. I've had a friend who's talked with people who defend spanking children all the time, and I was... Just to have an idea where I came from, I was spanked a couple times, not as much as some kids, and believe me, I truly feel for them. I was bullied a lot in school, so this has given me a absolute seething, zero tolerance hatred of bullies. I have no tolerance for them whatsoever. I have no pity for them. Anyway, that's where I'm coming from on this. Yeah, some people get bullied and become bullies themselves. I completely went the other way. I'm still trying to figure out why that is. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. The whole point I was making at the start is, a lot of parents defend spanking children by saying it's the only way they'll learn. It's the only way they'll learn. I only do it because I love them, and all this sort of thing. Well, when science comes along and says, well, actually, our studies have found that no, spanking does not help. In fact, it's making your child more likely to be antisocial, and even can lower his IQ level. We've also found that there are far better ways in dealing with your children. If you just listen to us, we can... And these people won't hear a word of it. They not only completely reject this, they actually morally attack anyone who suggests they don't spank their kids. Like the level at which people will defend spanking is something I find absolutely alarming, to say the least. It's like, dude, you're defending hitting children. Is this really a cause you want to fight tooth and nail for? Think about it. Think about what you're doing here. Can you even hear yourself? But they will not be deterred. And remember what you thought of the doctor when he angrily and passionately defended a cure that was hurting his patients, and heck, some studies have found it may not have even been working, and he was angrily and passionately defending it, not keeping an open mind and reacting with this new cure that might be far better for his patients with curiosity, like one would expect a man of science to be. Yeah, you thought he was you thought he must be a pretty messed up person to do something like that. Well, now you see what people who defend spanking look like to non-violent people like me. And to address the usual things, people say, "Oh, I was spanked and I turned out fine." To that, I got a couple responses like, "Well, you turned out to be the kind of person who passionately defends hitting children. I wouldn't say it turned out fine." He also turned out to be the kind of person who thinks anecdotes are evidence. They're not. I have told people this many times. And as one wise man once said, only 1/3 of people who smoke die from it, but does that therefore mean smoking is healthy? I think not. Oh, they say, oh, but the children are too young, they won't listen to reason. So your solution is to be completely unreasonable yourself? How are they ever going to learn that way? I mean, children learn by example. We all know this. Children copy their parents all the time. So if your reaction to a problem is to yell and hit and be a total monster, what exactly are you teaching your kids? That violence and being childish is how you solve your problems? Is it really that? Because I mean, really, the last thing we need is I can say this myself for sure. The last thing we need is more bullies in the world, and that's exactly what this kind of behavior encourages. It's a sad situation, but it's also an encouraging one, if you think about it. I mean, we got the rights of blacks, we got the rights of women, we got the rights the rights of homosexuals. Well, some places are still working on that. Not that I'm going to be mentioning any names, U.S. But the only major thing we got left is children. Like, it's still socially acceptable to discriminate against the rich, against atheists, against anarchists even, people like me. But children are the only group where it's socially acceptable to physically abuse them. And I think that's where we need to keep our focus on. There's people who rally against abortion and things like that. I say, if you think about it, abortion is all traceable back to childhood abuse. Whether it's promiscuity in teenagers is often a sign of neglect or abuse they suffered as a child. Because, you teach kids that once you're an adult, you get to throw your weight around and exert power over people. Well, of course they're going to be in a hurry to grow up so they can get in on that action. And rapists, most of them do what they do in their mind as an act of revenge against some authority figure, often female, who abused them when they were children. They're too afraid to go after the actual authority figure, so they do it in their own mind to a total stranger. Yes, it's twisted, but that's the thinking, and that's going on in their heads. And my favorite one of all is people say, "Oh, people they can't understand reason, things like that. It's the only way to deal with them." Well, let's take that to its logical end. So, if somebody is incapable of understanding reason, then physical abuse is an appropriate reaction for them. Well, think about it. If I took this to, say, dealing with the mentally ill, would you think that was okay? If I was working in a mental hospital and I started beating mentally ill people who were acting up, what would you think of me? You'd think I was a pretty nasty piece of work? Or what about elderly people who were getting a little senile and forgetful? Yeah, sure. I can't think of anybody who would ever morally support me doing something like that. So why is it okay for children? I mean, children, their only problem is lack of experience and immaturity. They're not physically incapable of it. They just haven't learned it yet. They need to learn it, and they need to learn it soon. And I really fail to see how yelling and hitting is going to teach them that. If anything, that's driving them further away from it. So that's my take on spanking. So, if you really love your kids, then you owe it to them to be open-minded enough to look at the real scientific data. I mean, this data has been around for decades. People have tried to hide it, people have tried to deny it, but enough already. If you're going to try and argue that your kids can't listen to reason and all that sort of thing, well then don't start rejecting reason yourself. Because if you do, then by your own admission, maybe you're the one who needs a good cuff upside the head. Just a little idea. Until next time, be aware and be wise.